This next panel is going to focus, and I'll ask our panelists and moderator to make their way up here, please. Next panel is going to focus on what happens when you have a bad day at the office. We're calling this Hacked. Now what? Panel will be moderated by Dakota State University's Professor of Cyber Operations, Dr. Josh Pauli, and it's going to feature area businesses who have unfortunately fell victim to a cyber attack. Thane Barnier, Web Development and IT Manager for the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, that's my shop, unfortunately, is going to share some perspective that Thane's had, as well as Joe Hurley, IT Director for the Sioux Falls Catholic Schools, and they will both explain what went wrong, what they would do differently, how they ultimately recovered from the attack, and what steps they've taken to prevent an attack from happening again. They're going to be joined by Jared Ducommun with Howalt McDowell Insurance. He will also explain options that are currently available for cyber insurance protection and why every business should consider adopting a policy.
All right, good morning. So I thought to start the panel, we'd have each of the guys kind of introduce themselves, give a brief recap of why they're here.
Well, my name is Thane Barnier. I am the IT and Web Development Manager for the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce. I've been there for 18 years. Which I know is unheard of in our industry, but I love being able to be a part of that and be a part of events like this and helping small businesses grow and deal with the challenges they have in the IT world.
I'm Joe Hurley. I'm the Director of IT for the Sioux Falls Catholic Schools. I was actually honored to get called to come and speak to you guys. And then when they said what the topic was about, then I wasn't near as excited about it because we've actually been hacked. So. I guess we take the bad and turned into good. So.
My name is Jared Ducommun. I work at Howalt McDowell, and I'm a risk management consultant there. And the opportunity to come and just share the news about what cyber insurance is, because sometimes people don't know it's even available. So the opportunity was out there, and so thank you.
Yeah, so I think a couple years ago we probably wouldn't even have this panel. So I think it speaks to the guys up here who were willing to talk about this. So. I think that's good. So let's jump into my first question. So as much as you're willing or as much as you can you take us through kind of the breach itself, what happened, how were you notified of it, how did you even know it was going on, and then what were the first couple hours or first couple days after the event?
Thanks a lot. Well, it's interesting you mentioned not having this panel a few years ago, because our initial response was, we're not talking about this to anybody. That just shows the way the landscape has changed over the years. We at the Chamber like to be on the cutting edge of everything, unfortunately. So, of course, we were one of the first businesses to ever get hit with CryptoLocker in 2013. Early fall 2013. I had a user come in, say, I got this weird screen up and I can't open any files. So I walked in, there's this big ugly red warning on the screen, and my first response was, what the hell is that? I'd never heard of it. I had no clue. I had to go and do first thing we just pulled the computer off the network, of course, but the damage had already been done. The user had waited 4 hours. They just kept closing this window for 4 hours. In that time, CryptoLocker encrypted 275,000 files on my network, just under 2 terabytes of information. Everything on our server that this person was connected to was compromised. So I did a little research. I had never heard of this. We called our friends at Ultra Connecting Point, who luckily had somebody on their staff that had heard of this. And they came over and we started working this. Now, we had just put in a new backup system, which we had tested just recently, and everything was great until we tried to do a restore, and nothing would restore. All the hardware was working fine. We got on the phone with the software vendor, and the software vendor looked at it and said, well, everything looks good. I guess it's just not working. And that was the extent of the support we got from the software company. The name's Adira, by the way. If anybody uses Adira, ditch them quick. I have no problem throwing them under the bus. So we went into our next phase mode. What do we do? How do we do this? The one thing we didn't want to do is pay the ransom. So we started working this, and myself and one of the guys from Connecting Point worked for the next 60 straight hours. We're trying to restore systems from volume shadow copy, which is sketchy at best. We were able to get back 95% of our data. But what we weren't able to decrypt was our main membership database. And as a Chamber of Commerce, that is our business. Now, with CryptoLocker, you had a 72-hour window to pay the ransom, and we fought it as long as we could, and we had to pay the ransom. Thankfully, it worked. What we did in response to this, the thing is, we have, all our systems were patched. Our antivirus, we have an enterprise-level antivirus system that's completely up to date. We have a top-of-the-line Cisco firewall, but it didn't matter because CryptoLocker was able to circumvent all those services because of social engineering. And really, the lesson there was the most important thing about recovering from ransomware is backup. Backup. And our response to this was to ditch that backup system, and we put in a 3-tier Barracuda backup system. So we now have 3 different layers of backup on-site and off-site, so that if one of those layers fail, we can recover from that second layer. Fast forward a couple of years, and again, we're on the cutting edge, and we have one of our users launch a new crypto version called Odin, which again, I went, what the hell is this? We got hit at noon. The antivirus definitions were released at 3 p.m. So we missed it by that much. But because we had a better response plan, we were able to restore all of our systems from backup within 6-7 hours and recover from that attack that time because we had another layer of redundancy there in case one failed.
Yeah, our story is similar. We had a bunch of students who were taking pictures from some of our high school events, and they were trying to edit them, and one day I get a call said that these photos and some of the documents that they've been working on aren't there anymore, so I thought it was kind of odd. So I went up and looked, and they weren't there. I looked at the directory structure, and it showed that there was data in there, but it was just blank. A few minutes later, one of the instructors looked and said, well, I see all the files, but now it has a lock on it. So I'm with you. I didn't really know what that was. Probably a half hour later, I get a call from the culprit. He had opened up an email. It looked like it was from the Better Business Bureau. It said that if you want to have a faster claim service, click on this link, and you can have faster access to the Better Business Bureau. I asked him, are you dealing with the Better Business Bureau? He says, no, but if it's going to make it faster, I'm all in. So he actually clicked on something that had nothing to do with anything he was doing. And what it did then is it went in, and it took a little while for it to actually finish its process, but it actually then put the lock on everything, and we had the same screen that you were just talking about. One thing we found out in a real big hurry is you realize who your friends are when you have an attack, because he had a shared drive, and every drive that he had access to on our network, all was affected. So all the people that were also using those same shared drives did not like this guy very well for a while, and they didn't want to be a part. They even said, I don't want him sharing. If he needs something, he can let me know, and I'll bring it down to him. They just did not want him on the network. So you do find out in a real big hurry who your friends are when something like this happens. We took a little bit different approach to solve it, though. First thing we did was we shut his computer off. We were lucky enough that we have backups, like you talked about, in multiple places. And so we basically just pulled the drive out of his computer and threw it away, put another drive in, and then all the files that needed to be backed up on the server, we were able to restore everything from backup. So we didn't actually lose any data. And we determined right away, too, that we were not going to pay a ransom. We just didn't think that was right. First of all, none of us knew what a Bitcoin was, so how are we going to use one? Oh, by the way, they would have taken a credit card, too, I think was the other option. But we just said, no, we're not going to do it. So we restored the server from the night's backup before, and then we went in and did the things that has been talked about. Now we made sure that all our backups actually did work. We weren't using tape anymore, so that was, it's a little more, the digital backups are a lot more reliable. But we did go and test every backup. I did go in and make sure that all of my servers were patched, because that's the next big thing. We have all these firewalls, we have all the patches, and everything was in place, but, the thing that got us was the human element. I know a bunch of people out here, you guys are all super people, you're all my friends, and we're all this Midwest nice, and we just trust people. So you get an email and it looks legit, yeah, I'll click on open it. And it took us about 2 years to get my staff convinced that you don't have to open every email that you get. If the bank sends you an email and says they need your user and password, delete it. They know your username and password. You don't have to give that information out. You recognize junk mail at home, and this is the same thing. If you get an email and it looks like it's too good to be true, it just doesn't seem right, it's got misspelled words, all those kind of, just delete it. Don't even open it. And like I said, we had a campaign for about a year where we worked really hard with our staff, convincing them that they don't have to open every email that they get. And now we have our own software where we're doing some campaigns where we send out emails to our staff just to make sure. And we show them, after they get the email, how they could have identified that email as being potential spam or the real deal. And so our staff is getting a lot better at that. So those are the big things that we had to do to make sure that everything was going to flow smoothly next time.
Can I add one thing? Maybe? Okay. What Joe said, the thing about the human element, that is it's what got us both times. And after that first incident, we did start doing training with our staff to learn how to identify those things. I call it the cyber militia, because we can't be the only guards on the gate. And the easiest way for someone to get in is to have someone inside the castle walls open up the gates. And that has helped immensely. I get probably, I would say, 10 or 12 a week where people will call me and say, hey, this isn't legit, right? And so people they're identifying this, and it's a great thing. So if you're not doing training with your users, strongly suggest it, because it does make a difference. The second time that we got hit, the hardest part there was actually figuring out where, patient 0 was, because there was no big flashing red screen that time. And it was somebody that had gotten, this fake invoice email that was coming in, knew it. He'd gotten 2 earlier and deleted them. But he was waiting for an invoice from someone named Marie, and this one came in from annamarie@gmail.com, and he just went, oh, that's my invoice, clicked it, and away we go. So even having a well-trained staff isn't 100%, but it saved us a lot of time there, because as soon as it launched, he knew what happened, called right away, we were able to address it.
One thing I'll add too, in our office, we see claims all the time, and in cyber that we see roughly 3 to 4 claims a year. And very similar to what Thane and Joe said, is that social engineering is the #1 situation going on in the cyber world. I did talk to a carrier and says, what do you guys see for claims? And they also rebutted and say, social engineering is the #1 thing. We've seen 2 claims that have happened in the past couple years that everybody should be aware of, where the email might be looking like it's coming from the CEO, the CFO, saying, hey, can you send me W-2s of some of the employees because we're putting something new together, whatever. And they'll send those. And guess what? Now all those W-2 information from their employees are now out there. So that's one that we're seeing quite often, is the W-2s, and usually twice a year. And the others are very similar to what they said, where here's a social engineering situation and they want $3,000 worth of ransom. We see those from time to time too. So just to kind of throw the input on what claims are seeing.
Yeah, so let's stay in the insurance area. So I think this is an area that obviously in the last 2, 3, 4 years has matured a lot. So can you talk through kind of how that has matured, what the current state of cyber insurance is, and then as people come to you and look for policies, what's the review look like? What kind of things are you looking for before a policy is issued?
About 3 years ago, the price of cyber insurance was quite expensive, and because there's very few people that were purchasing it. And can I get a show of hands that people that have cyber insurance today in the audience? It's roughly maybe 30-40%, which is very, very common in the industry today. So number one, you saw like, is it quite expensive? And because now it's becoming more and more popular, you're actually seeing that those costs are going down. However, because more claims are happening and different things are attributing to, the insurance world and the craziness of what's going on in cyber, you'll see where, the insurers that we work with, they want extremely detailed information. You'll see maybe an application that might be 3 pages and another one might be 14 pages. And I brought something with me just so you can see exactly, what types of things that, an insurer's looking for. And it's very, conducive to what Mark said and everybody else had said too. What is your secondary backup computer system? What's your business continuity plan? Disaster recovery plan? Incident response plan for network intrusions and virus incidents? Testing? Up-to-date active firewall technology, patch management procedures, multi-factor login for privileged access, remote access limited to VPN, updated antivirus software active on all computers and networks, intrusion detection software, valuable sensitive data backup procedures, and a procedure to test or audit network security controls. So like this insurer itself will say, we're not gonna work with you, client, because of your lack of infrastructure and network security itself. 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. It might have been like a 3-page, yep, we'll get you on and now you have coverage. That's major today, and it's only gonna get worse because of all the different things that we're seeing, in the industry world, so.
So I have to ask, because the main topic was the user education, social engineering prevention, are any insurers curious if that kind of education is going on, or is everybody worried about VPNs and network devices?
Everything, yeah.
Okay.
No, really, it is everything that they're looking at itself, and for them to understand, they look towards us to ask the questions and find out, what the company is and how strong they are to make sure that their system is updated. And when we're working with smaller businesses, they can't necessarily afford a 3-staff IT, team. They might be working with whatever, Eide Bailey or somebody else, to help making sure that their network is secure. And that's where we're seeing a lot of claims and issues, is because of the small businesses that really just don't have the team or the resources to make sure, there's 3 people in this business, and who's doing the update on the firewall? Oh, that wasn't done for a long time ago. And that's where you're seeing a lot of the issues happen. So, and they can't afford the $3,000, charge that they're going to get.
All right, so let's jump back into the breach world here. So did you guys, can you talk through did you notify your stakeholders? Did you have any pushback? Anything like that, or did you truly keep this quiet? And I mean, at some point somebody found out, right? Because we asked you. But can you take us through kind of that, and what was the fallout from that process?
Yeah, the first thing I did was, once we realized that it was an attack, I got together with our superintendent, a couple of principals, and just talked about what had happened. We were pretty confident right away what had happened and how we got it, just from talking to the guy that actually clicked on that link in the email. So our big thing was, well, if he got one, how many other people got one? So we quickly sent out an email to staff, and not only sent the email out, but we said, tell everybody, if you get an email that looks suspicious, don't delete it. You can forward it to us, or we'll come out and look at it, whatever the case may be. But we didn't contact anybody outside of our organization, but we wanted to make sure that everybody inside our organization knew that this type of thing could happen to them too.
Yeah, the first thing that we did was sit down with our president and our finance director and figure out what our exposure was here, and working with the folks from Ultra to help us figure out, okay, what is this and what is our exposure? And I got to give credit to them, because they were really there, supportive to hold our hand through this. And we determined that we weren't looking at a release of information. This was just an encryption of data on our network. So we weren't as worried about notifying stakeholders, because there wasn't any potential exposure for them. At that point, we got with our senior leadership on our board and said, okay, what do we want to do? And overwhelmingly, it was immediate, like, we're not paying the ransom. So at that point, we went to work to try and recover the data. After we realized we could not recover the data, then we went back with our senior staff and said, okay, here's the deal. We can restore from a 6-month-old backup and manually rebuild every transaction we've done over the 6 months, or we can pay the ransom and hope it works. And at that point, ultimately, that's why they call it ransomware, because we were out of time. But we did engage our senior leadership in making those decisions as to how we wanted to approach this, not just from a financial standpoint of paying the ransom, but from a moral standpoint of, do we want to encourage this? And while our initial answer was no, ultimately, we weren't left with much choice.
All right, so my last question, then we'll turn over to the audience for all three of you. So what would be the outside, so we talked backups and we've talked user education. What are the 2 or 3 kind of takeaways if they're an IT staff person here? Kind of what would you say the top 2 or 3 things to prepare yourself? And then the same question kind of with the insurance angle is, what would be the handful of things to get yourself in the best shape for getting a good rate or for having the best coverage?
I guess it sounds like it sounds defeatist to say this, but the biggest takeaway that I took from that is it's going to happen. There's always going to be a 0-day threat that's out there that we have no protection against. And we prepare the best we can. We put the best protections in place that are available, but we're still dealing with that slight area of risk. So you have to be prepared for that 1% chance that you're going to get hit on day 0 when there are no protections available. And that involves planning and disaster recovery. And so it's not just about building the castle wall, it's about how do you fill the breach when one happens so that your business, you have that continuity of business and ultimately continue to move forward rather than having to take a step backward because of it.
You know, I'm really lucky. I have a technology committee. In fact, some of them are here. And so I get to use some of their expertise and things that they've had to experience too. But it's not just social engineering that we need to worry about. I've talked to other groups, and a friend of mine who was an IT director down in Iowa, somebody had dropped a flash drive by the front door of their building, and somebody picked up and said, hey, a flash drive, I needed one of these for at home. So he brought it into school, plugged it into his network, or into his computer to see what was on it, said it didn't look like anything was on it, and he had also compromised their network by doing that. So, you know, it's not just social engineering, it's all kinds of different ways of getting in. So, you know, you have to look at all your policies, you know, what devices do you allow in your network. You know, we don't have all the compliance issues, so, you know, we allow our staff to use flash drives. I encourage everybody to have their information in multiple places just for that reason. You know, if you lose your computer, we've got it on a server somewhere that's backed up. If we lose a server, you've got your information on your computer, you can still work. So we've always encouraged our staff, but some businesses aren't able to do that. But just know that there are more ways than just emails and social media for these attacks to happen.
On the insurance side of things, you know, everybody has heard, you know, today about, like, from the panels and the speakers that test and make sure you have backups and you do your due diligence to make sure your network is secure. That's known, and that needs to be done itself. The more up-to-date your network is and the more questions you can answer, the cheaper your rate would be. I mean, if they're looking at you and saying, okay, there is way too many, like, holes in this client, they might charge you quite a bit for a cyber policy. And the other thing with a cyber policy, and the greatest thing is it has response mechanisms to help out the insured. You know, if there is an extortion scenario, and let's say it's a $30,000 extortion, there's coverage for that. You know, there might be a hefty deductible, but there is coverage to help those situations itself for businesses. There's also, you know, a crisis management. So, you know, I believe the NIST individual is talking about, like, if something happens, you have to alert the public, and you have to alert your clients as well. There's coverage to help make sure the due diligence is being done to alert people. If there has to be credit monitoring, you know, for those people as well, then that is help covered with, you know, with your coverage itself. In the situation where, hey, I need now forensics. I need people on site helping our network to make sure our systems can get up and going. there's coverage for that. So there are all these different things that add up in costs. You know, hey, I got an issue, you know, Joe's team is on top of it, but some of them aren't. You don't have the staff that Joe has. And all of a sudden you're at $12, $15, $30,000, you know, to help, you know, remediate your network. There's coverage for that. So there's multiple different things to help that. And the other is the third party scenario too, as I said, with your customers. That's kind of the gray area and the scary area where not all policies are the same. We work with 90 different carriers for different coverages. And today, the insurance world, if you buy like a property or liability coverage, it's on standardized form. So generally speaking, they're very similar, but there's different tweaks to it. On the cyber, it's not standardized. So each company can do what they want, they can change what they want, they can give back what they want. So it's very, very important to make sure that you can look at it and to see exactly what is being covered and what is not being covered, because not any two policies are alike when it comes to cyber insurance.
Hi. So we use, user training, cyber user training, and it's been helpful, but it's not, the magic bullet either. But I just want to ask Joe Hurley to share the user pizza coupon story because I think it's really funny.
Okay, so we use some software called KnowBefore, maybe some of you use it too, where I can send out an email to my staff, a spam email, and it comes with a landing page, so once they do something we don't want them to do, we get a list of who all it is, and sometimes we'll ask them for their username and passwords. First couple times we did it, we got a lot of people that gave up their username and passwords. We don't get that anymore. But I had sent out, I had a campaign a couple months ago where it said free pizza from Pizza Hut. All you have to do is, click here and download this coupon. Somebody actually just printed off the email that I'd sent out that said free pizza from Pizza Hut, took it there and actually did get a pizza. So I don't know if there's if we all want to try that or not, but if
Was
you
it
have
you,
no,
Joe?
No, it wasn't me. But if you have KnowBefore, print it off and see if it works. It did once.
That's a hack in and of itself.
Yeah, what kind of antivirus were you running at the time? And also, how do you deal with standard users for mobile machines?
How do we do what with the standard?
Standard users for mobile machines, or do you do administrators?
Yeah, that in a school, we at one time everybody was our staff was all administrators on their machines, only because they wanted to do their own patches, or if they get we've eventually gotten that list a lot smaller. Some of our administrators kind of think of it as a demotion. They didn't like the title when I was a network administrator because that sounded cool than just a school administrator. So we had all those kind of things. So we had to work really hard to not make some people administrators on their computer. Because again, if somebody gets into your computer and you have admin rights on that computer or on the network, so do they. So it took us a while, but we've got them convinced that they really don't need admin rights, and if they need something installed, we can come out and install it, pretty quickly. So we did take the admin rights away. We've probably got maybe 5 or 6 people that still have admin rights, but they're like our computer teachers and those people that are a little more savvy than just the average staff.
Yeah, we were kind of the same boat. We've had to have all our users have local admin rights because of legacy software. I'm ecstatic to say that in a few months that will no longer be the case. We're moving away from that software, and I'll be able to lock down all our systems, which will reduce our attack surface considerably. As far as antivirus, we use a Trend Micro enterprise level system. I've looked at a number over the years trying to see if we could get anything better, and really the reality is, as a nonprofit, at the price point that I can afford, they're all pretty much the same. Unless you can move into a Silence or something like that, which is way beyond my price range and budget. But
And we were using semantic endpoint protection, which does what it says it is. I mean, we've done some penetration tests. We could not get at any information on those computers. But the problem with semantic endpoint protection is it's just an endpoint protection. So if you have an infected computer, it does nothing for that computer if it's trying to send something out to other computers on the network. It'll only protect anything coming into that computer. So we did actually make a change after that. But that was something that I was kind of surprised at, is that it will protect that one computer. But if you have a computer that didn't have the endpoint protection on it, one that was missed, or if you're installing something and for whatever reason it wasn't installed in there, then that computer was vulnerable. And I would have preferred the antivirus software on the computer to stop anything going out to, but it did not.
I might also make one more point on the administrator levels. One of the things that we had to do, because we couldn't get around that, is we locked down our systems through group policy to the point where literally I had to change group policies in order to even install a print driver. It was, if I'd had more than 60 users like I do, it would have been completely untenable. But that was the only way we could ensure avoiding that kind of ransomware installation while still preserving the required rights we had for that software.
Thank you very much. My name is Chris, and I'm a red team and blue team lead in our organization. And lately, we start seeing a lot of fileless injection attacks. And my question to you is this, how are you preparing, or what step are you taking to protect yourself against those kind of attacks? Because the last file we had, and we could upload it in VirusTotal, none of the antivirus could detect the attack in those. Those are the kind of attack that inject themselves in the memory. So do you have any tool, any steps that you're using right now to prevent against those attacks?
From an external point, coming in with those kind of attacks, we've actually made a move. I'll make another plug for one of our partners, SDN. We've moved to some of their managed firewall services, and we have had a few of those kind of incoming injection attacks, which have been blocked by that firewall. So I know that from that side of things, we're looking pretty good with the FortiGate piece that we have. From an internal injection standpoint, it's not really something that I have addressed because with our users, we don't really see. I don't really see that as a vulnerability, an attack surface that we have. We don't have a lot of people bringing in external files and things like that aren't coming in through that firewall.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We have a managed firewall through SDN. We've got over 5,000 devices on our network, and there's only 3 of us, so we can't keep up with everything. So the managed firewall was huge for us. And also, we've got multiple VLANs inside of our building, and so the firewall also monitors traffic going back and forth between the VLANs. So it's constantly looking for those kind of vulnerabilities. I get a report probably every, it's about 10 days from SDN about all the things that the firewall has caught, all the patches they've done. It's a huge service for us. It's, like I said, it was almost a full-time job just trying to manage the firewall and those things before. So it's a great resource for us. And like I said, they do monitor traffic. I get a call once in a while saying that they detected something. They're not sure if it's bad or not, but we've killed it, and we just wanted you to make aware of it. So it's an invaluable service.
First, I want to put a plug in. If you can afford a product such as Cylance, I highly recommend it. We made the move a couple of years ago, and it's vastly helped us from a security perspective. My question for you, you mentioned using KnowBe4 and doing phishing campaigns. What's your tips, or what have you done for those repeat offenders in helping them get the lesson?
Yeah, KnowBe4 calls them clickers. If you got somebody that keeps clicking on things, you can do different things. You create a group called clickers, and the people that do that, they get a different landing page than the rest of them, so they are actually forced to watch a video, and they can't fast forward it because it knows the video is 4 minutes long. They have to sit through the whole 4 minutes. If they don't, we get notified that they actually didn't see it. So that's what we do with those people. And again, we follow it up with an email. And I also told them, one of the first emails that we sent out, it looked like it actually came from me. And so we have a code word that I put, just a random code word that I put in an email to our staff when I'm sending something out that, I'm going to ask them to click on a link or something, so they know it's from me. And it's always some, crazy word that, just doesn't belong. But our staff knows then that email's from me, because I don't want to trick them into doing anything. KnowBe4, I think their philosophy is they'd rather trick the staff into, they try to make these things super complicated, but that makes the staff uneasy. So, you know, we're pretty upfront with them. We tell them there's another one coming, be prepared. We tell them the signs, you know, the things to look for. And then the clickers, they usually get treated a little bit different, and they actually have to watch videos where the ones that don't click don't have to.
Just wanted you guys to know I was also in your shoes one time as a third party helping someone with a problem like the ones you encountered. And I wondered if you guys had submitted files to any of your company, antivirus companies, for decryption purposes, and did they fail at that attempt? In the scenario I was in, it took them 3 weeks, but they finally decrypted some files that we couldn't recover in any other way. So if you could address that for me.
We didn't, you know, on that first attack with CryptoLocker, you know, the 72 hours, I think if it had been anything but our main database, we probably would have just taken the risk and tried it, but that was our business. We couldn't take that risk. And the second incident, we recovered everything, 100% of our data, so there was no need to go down that road.
Yeah, we actually deleted the hard drive from the guy that actually got the email, not knowing if it was going to be some time release thing, it was going to come back again. So we deleted his drive. And then the servers, you know, all the shares that were shared out with everybody, we actually gave them a different share name, put them on a different server, and then restored them back there. So we didn't use any of the original file shares, any of the server names, anything. Everything was completely different from those users. And then we also went in and just verified all the people that have access to all those shared files. Because, you know, there's always times, at least in our environment, where somebody wants to get access to some pictures and it's shared out by the people that are creating the yearbook. So we grant them access to it so they can get it. So we went in and just cleaned that up and just made sure that the only people that had access to those shares are the people that are going to be using them all the time. If it's just a one-time thing, we'll now just go make a copy and hand it to them rather than give them access to it. So we've eliminated the number of shares we have too.
One of the previous panel members related to us his experience relative to students. And since we have two, to include the moderator, folks up there that deal with students on a full-time basis, do you have any experience or guidance or thoughts on how what the previous panel member discussed? How do you deal with the student issues, if you have any, and both on the higher education and also on the elementary and post-education?
Yeah, it was, Jim Edmond mentioned that, and I know the incident that he talked about where a student did a denial of service at testing time, so that way that nobody could get logged in to do the testing. We had an incident too where we had a kid that had access to a password to some of our switches and shut one of our switches off. He was actually led away in cuffs. And so the whole student body saw that. I mean, we couldn't have bought space on Kello and it got better use out of that. So, and then also he was a senior. It was a senior prank, and he didn't get to graduate with the rest of the class. So depending on the severity of it, you know, there are things too that kids do that we get away with. But this was kind of a big deal, and this kid even self-confessed. So he did everything wrong, but then he did everything right. But we still decided that we needed to make sure that, you know, we didn't allow this again. So we actually did call the police, and the police took him away. Went to his house, searched his computers at home to see if he had any of these passwords that he'd gotten a hold of on his home computers. His parents were pretty uncomfortable with that, obviously, because their computers got searched too. So it was a big windfall, and our students realized that. And this was 2 years ago. Last year we had nothing. I mean, there was no senior pranks last year.
I'll have to watch what I say. I have some students in the room. I would hate for them to, you know, raking over the coals here. Obviously, higher ed's a little bit different. So at Dakota State, our students are administrators on their machine. We hand them a DSU image machine the first day on campus. We encourage them to connect devices to the network, so it's a much different environment to begin with. So with that as a backdrop, in 10 years of teaching some pretty offensive cybersecurity things at DSU, we've never had an issue with a student. We've never had them take down anything at DSU. We've never had them go to a local restaurant and hack into a point of sale system. We've never had that. So I think there's a couple reasons for that. The first is we hit them over the head pretty hard with the buzz term of cyber hygiene and responsible action. So we hit them pretty hard there. A lot of our students have some pretty lofty career goals in terms of where they want to work and what kind of places they want to work at. So we let them know that if they do something dumb when they're trying to be cool, as an 18-year-old, that's going to bite them when they're 22 or 23 trying to get one of those jobs. The other thing that I think is actually a bigger help is we give them a safe place to do dumb things. So we have a virtualized environment where there's vulnerable computers, and if they want to be a hacker at 2 in the morning, we give them a place to do that. So we have a very robust virtual environment where they can just do stunt hacking, for the lack of a better term. No different than the reason that skateboard parks were built. So they'd quit ruining fronts of businesses, right? Give them that place over there, and they can try their tricks. Same way we do with our virtual environment. So in 10 years, knock on wood, we haven't had a student. We've never had anybody led away in cuffs. And this was a battle that we fought with our administration 10 years ago when we wanted to start getting into this. Was you're going to teach students how to do what? Much the same way that, if you paid attention in chemistry class, you could probably build a bomb. So if you pay attention in cybersecurity class, you could probably do some pretty nasty stuff. So that's that. The only incident we had was we had a faculty member a number of years ago who was doing some external work and mistyped an IP address. And the university got called from law enforcement, and that was very, very minimal. But thousands of students have come through the cyber program at DSU, and so far so good. So no pressure to the students in the room, right? So.
Just sort of a follow-up.
Sure.
When you talk to your cohorts around the country, is this an issue relative to education and students in general, or not?
So the question is, as we talk to colleagues around the nation, is this a common theme? Like, are they concerned with their students' behavior, or are their students acting up? Not too much, right? Most of the higher education institutions that DSU works with are kind of in that same boat. Certainly, there's dumb students everywhere, and I'm sure we'll catch our fair share sooner or later that do dumb things or make bad choices. But again, I think there's the big piece of education and then giving them a usable outlet. So in the higher ed world, it's pretty straight that way.
The other thing about the program like DSU, one of the responses that I did to this incident that we had was I decided I need to learn more about what the current type of attacks are. So I took the Certified Ethical Hacker training from EC Council, or as I like to say, 5 days of terror. What I learned in that, in 5 days, I went into that thinking, okay, I need to update my coding skills. I didn't write a single piece of code in 5 days. The tools are out there for anybody to get their hands on. Like I think it was Special Agent Patel was saying, you double click it, install it, and type in the address of the computer you want to attack. Where we need to start teaching kids is this idea, the ethical part of that. And that's where a program like DSU is a beautiful thing, because they're teaching not only the skills, but the ethics and how to use those skills. And that's something that I think a lot of young people are missing these days is with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility, and with great skills comes a great responsibility to use those skills ethically.
Other questions from the group? Yes.
Question for Jared, if I may. Jared, on the insurance front, not every entity that tries to get cyber insurance does, correct? And then two, in terms of a response from an insurer, after an incident, is it just that, let's say, bad incident happens, a check may be written to that entity, or is there more there than a financial transaction? Can you help me with that?
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
The first one is, generally speaking, with like 90 different types of insurers, we can find coverage for most people. Some of it, like I said before, might be a little expensive based upon their network security. On the second question, I would have to say that based upon like depending upon the issue itself and with the forensics and the research, because the insurer will go and see exactly what the network is about, see what problems existed, of course, and that will take some time, just as what everybody has talked about with when they've had issues. So will they cut a check right away? Probably not. They'll have to do their due diligence and see exactly what caused the issue and what's being done to remediate that situation if it were to happen again.
All right, well, thank you to the panelists. Appreciate your insight. Thank you.